So we are now starting with Chapter 12, the perfect system. And in particular, we are talking about the perfect active system. We will get to the passive later. The perfect active is where the subject does the doing. And that is our perfect system. First of all, what do we mean by perfect? Perfect comes from the Latin word per plus factus, which means done completely. And it's the difference between I did something versus I have done. This is a distinction we make all the time that you may not consider, that you may not realize you make that distinction. We talk about I did something versus I have done it to indicate certain subtleties, for example. You might want to say, hey, hey, did you do that? Or do you want to do something? Oh no, I have done that. That means it's over and done. I have done it means it's completed. It's over and done. I did it is just a simple past tense. May or may not be over and done. It's just a simple indication of fact. Of tense. It happened yesterday. I did it yesterday. But if it's the perfect tense, it is over and done with. Think about this. Come home, your roommate, somebody's cooking something great, it smells great. You say, have you eaten, is the question. And your reply may be the simple past tense, oh, I ate a sandwich at lunch, but what does that mean? Does that mean you're done? No, because if you were done and you didn't want any of that food, you would say, oh, no thanks, I've eaten. I have eaten, that means it's over and done with. I ate leaves open the possibility that, yeah, I'd like some of that stuff that you're cooking that smells so good. So these are the distinctions. These are the uses we have all the time. Let's look at a timeline. The perfect tense, and we're going to talk about three distinct aspects of it. The present perfect, the past perfect, and the future perfect. Okay? Consider a timeline. This is the present tense. If we want to say something in the past, we want to go back in the past times, that's the perfect tense. I've gone to the store. Okay, or I went to the store. Past tense. Perfect and past for the purposes of this are indistinguishable. Let's say we want to throw it further back in the past. I had gone to the store. That means we have to go further back in time. So this equals have, and this equals had. I wanted to, or I went to the store because I had run out of milk. Before my running to the store in the past tense, before that, I ran out of milk. Now that's called in Latin, we refer to it as the pluperfect. Plu means more, the more perfect, the more in the past. And then the future, by the time I finish this video, you will have learned. So that's an action in the future that will be completed. You will have learned everything. You will have read the entire chapter. You will have done something. So let's just break it down very simply. The perfect system. The present perfect. I have done something. The pluperfect. I had done something. And the future perfect. I will have done something. And I want you to be conscious of when you're using this. A lot of times, let's consider we've learned about the imperfect. The imperfect is for habitual or repeated action in the past. I would do this. I used to do that. Or I simply did. The simple past is acceptable for both the present perfect, or the perfect system, and the imperfect. In other words, if we have the imperfect system here, And the perfect system here, the imperfect is I would, I used to, or the simple I did. The perfect I have, I had, I will have, okay? These two systems overlap with the simple past. I'm taking a lot of time to explain that sometimes the simple past in English can be translated, can be used for the imperfect or the present perfect. I would encourage you as you go through this chapter to really focus on using the perfect tense to translate with have or had. Okay? Just to get that distinction in your head. Again, in our usage, we do it all the time. And we flip back and forth and we use the perfect past when the Romans, I think, would more likely choose between an imperfect or perfect. I mean, not more likely, they would. The Romans don't have this problem. It's a translation that has a problem. We have this simple past that we can't ever decide, that we don't know how the Romans translate this. The Romans don't have that problem. So if you think about it, we have three ways of expressing the past tense. The imperfect way, the simple past, or the perfect way. Romans only have the two. And this is where the problems are going to be. But again, for the purposes of now and the next coming weeks, or the perfect system means have or had. And it refers to actions that are over and done with in the past. What does this mean in Latin? In Latin, let's look at some Latin words. Amo, amare, amavi, amatum, or video, videre, vidi, and visum. Or how about one of the third I-O words you've learned? Facio, facere, facie, factum. All of these that we're talking about, every last one of them is built on the third principal part. Every tense of the perfect active is the third principal part. It's built off amavi, vidi, facie. Any Latin verb in the dictionary it's the perfect active system. That means the present perfect, the pluperfect, or the future perfect is based off the third principal part. Period. Period. So, that's helpful because if you rethink of a word like duco, ducere, duxi, ductum, and you see duc, whatever the ending is, you know that's going to be the present imperfect or future. And if you see dux, you know that's going to be present perfect, pluperfect, or future perfect. So that's a handy bit of information to have there. So the third principal part is what this is built off of. Dux is the present stem. I'll write it up here. Duco, ducere, duxi, ductum. And again, this is going to hold true for any verb in Latin. The third principal part minus that I is your present stem. Now, what you're going to do is, of course, put endings on it. We're going to put one set of endings to indicate the present perfect, one set of endings to indicate the pluperfect, and one set of endings to indicate the future perfect. Here is our perfect stem. The present perfect endings are e, isti, it, imis, istis, erunt. The pluperfect endings are eram, eras, erat, eramus, eratus, erant. And the future perfect endings are ero, eris, erit, erimis, eritis, erunt. So we can dux, dux, here's our present stem. I do not encourage you copying these or doing this in this way. In other words, I do not encourage you conjugating in the perfect tense in this manner. I am demonstrating a point at how incredibly consistent the perfect tense is. Isti, it, imis, istis, erunt. See what I've done? I've just moved them over. I've just moved them over. Eram, eras, erat, eramis, eratis, erant, ero, eris, erit, erimis, eritis, erunt. Incredibly, incredibly consistent. Now, have you noticed something about these, at least in the future perfect, the pluperfect and future perfect? What are those? Those are the verbs of the forms of the verb to be. In other words, if I want to make the present perfect, I have done something. I take the perfect stem and add the present perfect endings. If I want to make the past perfect, if I want to throw it further back in the past, I take the perfect stem, the third principal part minus the I add the past tense of the verb to be. If I want to make the future perfect, I take the perfect stem minus the I, and I add the future forms of the verb to be. So in some ways, when you see dux eram, oh, you're thinking dux, perfect tense, eram, got it, past tense. Dux eritis, oh, dux, that's a perfect, the third principal part, I'm in the perfect system, okay? And then the future perfect, oh, that makes sense. Dux istis, oh, dux, perfect system, istis, that's the present perfect. I encourage you to go through here, in other words, duxi, duxisti, duxit, duximis, duxistis, duxerunt. I have led, you have led, he has led, we have led, you have led, they have led. Duxeram, duxeras, duxerat, duxeramus, duxeratus, duxerant is I had led, you had led, he had led, we had led, you had led, they had led. And again, that's what we use to throw it further back in the past. Duxero, duxeris, duxerit, duxerimis, duxeritis, duxerunt. That is the future perfect. I will have led, you will have led, he will have led, we will have led, you will have led, they will have led. Work with these. These are words you use all the time, but you may not have thought about them in this way. You may not have thought about exactly what you mean when you say, oh, we will have, or and granted, we don't use the future perfect that much, but you know what I mean when I say it. And when you distinguish between the simple past tense, when you choose in your regular conversations to use the have, when you choose to say I had, when you say I had something, I had done this, I had done that, you are throwing it further back in the past. You all do this. You all understand it. You may not have thought about it in these ways. So, now we have the present system and the perfect system. We have the not the high letter. We have the present system. In other words, these are the words that are built on the present tense, the present stem of the Latin verb. And then we have the perfect system. These are the tenses that are built on the perfect stem. And the present system is the present imperfect, the future, and the perfect is the present perfect, the what we call in Latin the pluperfect, and the future perfect. And I'm going to conjugate fully now in the active forms of the present imperfect system of traho, trahere, troxy, troctum. And I strongly encourage all of you to pick one verb of each conjugation to fully conjugate in the way I'm doing it. Present, and let me start over. Traho, trahis, trahit, trahimus, trahitis, trahunt. That is the verb traho, to drag or drag in the present tense. Imperfect. Trahebam, trahebas, trahebat, trahebamus, trahebatis, trahebant. That is the imperfect tense. And the future, traham, because it's a third conjugation verb. Trahes, trahet, trahemus, trahetis, trahent. I am doing this because it is so important. I believe this is so critical to your understanding, grasping Latin language. I am modeling for you. I am providing a model for you to do. And I strongly suggest you do this. Imperfect, in the perfect system, we're going to build this off the perfect tense. Troxy, troxisti, troxit, troximus, troxitis, troxistis, troxistis, troxerunt. Present, the pluperfect. Troxeram, trox eras, trox erat, troxeramus, trox eratis, trox erant. And in the future perfect, let me write this just a little bit smaller so I have room. The future perfect. Troxero, troxeris, troxerit, troxerimus, troxeritis, troxerunt. Does that make sense? There's one thing I've not mentioned. In my eagerness to present consistency and demonstrate consistency, Latin was a living language, and irregularities crop in. You may ask yourself, wait a minute, how can I tell the difference between the perfect and the future perfect? What Latin did was, for consistency's sake and differentiating most importantly, they would conclude troxerint. This is your one exception, so that, in other words, they maintained that I throughout. Eris, erit, erimus, eritis, erint. Troxerint. in the third person plural so that you could differentiate it from Traxerunt. And I hate to spend so much time on one little exception, but it makes all the difference in the world. And I think they did that. Number one, I've said before, Romans don't like that int sound. They will avoid it whenever possible. But here in this example, you can't avoid it because it differentiates between und and the present perfect. And with that said, I need to make this change here as well, int. It's the only exception. So I encourage you, there are 5 conjugations that exist that we classify in Latin. There is the, first, second, third IO, and fourth. I encourage you to fully conjugate perhaps a first conjugation on Monday, a second conjugation on Tuesday, a third conjugation on Wednesday, a third IO on Thursday, and a fourth on Friday. Do this for the conceivable future, the next 2 weeks. It doesn't take that long, and trust me, this will pay off tremendously. Tremendously. I encourage you, fully conjugate in the active system both the present, present and the perfect, all the forms of a verb. I think it'll pay off tremendously. If you have any questions, by all means, please ask. Have a great day.